Have you ever felt that quiet heaviness inside? After saying something harsh? Ignoring someone who needed us? Or choosing comfort over what we knew was right? That knot in the chest, that unsettled feeling, that is guilt. When we are young, many of us did something small. A lie, a broken object, blame on someone else, a promise we didn't keep. Maybe nobody got us. Maybe the world moved on. But we didn't. Years passed. And strangely, we still remembered that moment. Not because we are punished, but because something inside us stayed unsettled. Why does the world forget but we don't? Today, instead of avoiding guilt, let us understand it. Because when understood properly, guilt becomes a doorway to growth. But first, we must define it clearly. Guilt is actually a moral emotion. It shows that I care. It shows that my values are alive. Guilt says, I made a mistake. I hurt someone. I acted against what I believe is right. And surprisingly, guilt can be healthy. Because guilt focuses on behavior, not identity. It points to an action, something specific, something correctable. Guilt can guide us to apologize, repair, take responsibility, choose differently next time. In that sense, guilt can be a teacher. It doesn't come from rules alone. It is uncomfortable. Yes, but it can be constructive. It comes from inner standards. That's why two people can do the same action and only one feels guilt. Because guilt depends on awareness, not just behavior. And this is important. Guilt is not always unhealthy. In its healthy form, guilt is always a moral compass. It tells us, pause, reflect, correct. Now that we understand what guilt is, let us explore where it sits in our consciousness. According to David Hawkins, emotions exist on levels of consciousness, some expansive and light, others heavy and contracting. Guilt sits low on that scale. It carries dense energy. It contracts, it pulls us inward. But here is something powerful. A person with low awareness rarely feels guilt. Not because they are free, but because they are disconnected. When awareness grows, sensitivity grows, empathy grows, responsibility grows, and with that, guilt appears. Not as punishment, but as internal guidance system. In that sense, guilt is not weakness. It is moral intelligence waking up. And that leads us to an important question. How do we recognize guilt clearly within ourselves? Guilt does not scream, it whispers. It shows up as replaying one memory repeatedly, feeling undeserving of happiness, over-apologizing years later, quietly sabotaging our own success. Sometimes it hides in nostalgia. We remember childhood moments, not the joyful ones, but the tiny mistakes. Why? Because guilt attaches itself to unfinished lessons. When guilt is ignored or suppressed, it affects us deeply. Emotionally, irritability, anxiety, self-criticism. Mentally, overthinking and replaying situations. Physically, heaviness and tension. Spiritually, feeling undeserving of peace. Unresolved guilt drains life energy. But processed guilt strengthens character. Its purpose is correction, not lifelong punishment. Just as physical pain protects the body, guilt protects the soul. Yet often, we confuse guilt with something deeper. So before we go further, let us separate guilt from shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. Guilt focuses on behavior. Shame attacks identity. Guilt motivates repair. Shame demands hiding. Guilt can move us forward. Shame keeps us stuck, silent, and isolated. So the goal is not to eliminate guilt. The goal is to prevent it from becoming shame. But even knowing this, we still resist. Why? Because ego resists self-correction. Ego says, it wasn't that serious. Others do worse. Why should I be the one to change? Let them fix themselves first. This is just how I am. When we fix others, our ego feels safe. When we fix ourselves, our ego feels exposed. Awareness says, pause, observe, own it, and grow. The discomfort is not from mistake, it is from letting go of the identity that defends it. But every time we choose self-education over self-defense, we rise in consciousness. And this is where healing begins. Healing guilt is not denial, it is completion. Because guilt is meant to guide us, not chain us. Here is the 5 gentle steps to follow. Step 1. Acknowledge honestly. Name what happened without excuses. Step 2. Feel without dramatizing. Allow discomfort, but do not turn it into self-hatred. Step 3. Repair where possible. Apologize, correct, restore, contribute. Step 4. Take the lesson. Reflect. What value did we violate? What will we change? But leave the punishment behind. Step 5. Release with self-compassion. Correct when we can. Forgive what we cannot change. Growth requires forgiveness, including self-forgiveness. Once repaired, let it go. Holding guilt after repair is not growth, it is punishment. And when we practice this sincerely, something shifts. When guilt is met with courage, it transforms into integrity. We breathe easier, we sleep better, we stop replaying the past. Hawkins describes higher consciousness as expansive. Love, joy, peace. We do not jump there instantly, but every honest self-correction lifts us upward. Guilt, when processed, becomes wisdom, and wisdom feels light. Guilt is not our enemy. It is our inner teacher. But only when met with awareness and compassion. It means our heart is still alive, our conscience still speaks, and humanity is intact. Let us not run from guilt. Let us learn from it. We are not meant to be perfect. We are meant to be conscious. Real strength is not never falling. Real strength is the courage to look at ourselves honestly, to educate ourselves quietly, to refine ourselves willingly, even when no one is forcing us to. And when we do that, guilt stops being a burden. It becomes a doorway from who we are to who we are becoming.